Why did PartinG forfeit versus Maru? Are all Europeans dumb? And did the CIA ever truly fund Bin Laden? All of these questions will be answered in today's episode of StarCraft Today.
StarCraft Today.
Your favorite StarCraft news show. Bad news for PartinG fans around the world as he decided to forfeit his Dreamhack play-in game against Maru. The Dreamhack play-ins qualify you for the Dreamhack seasonal finals in which the Koreans and the foreign scene fight against each other for the ultimate honor of being called the best StarCraft player at that moment. PartinG, however, already had a festivity scheduled as it was the Korean Thanksgiving, also known as Chuseok. And he couldn't attend the game. Poor planning out of Dreamhack, obviously, planning that on top of a Korean holiday as big as Thanksgiving, and very disappointing for people who wanted to see some high-level PvT that day. The second Korea play-in did get played, and that was Dark versus Dream. In that match, Dark managed to take out Dream in a relatively easy 3-1. It seems that Dream's still not quite up to par to the very top level, but he's always capable of beating the guys just below that, the tier 1.5, tier 2 guys. Sadly for Dream, no season finals for him this time around. This also was the week of the Dreamhack Masters Winter Qualifiers, and there were a couple of minor upsets. I say minor, but Bly not making it into a round of 32 in a European tournament, that is actually a major upset. Bly considered to be definitely a very solid top 16 player most of the time, and one of the cheesiest as well. Actually not managing to qualify, losing to Harstem and to Jumi in the qualifiers. Of course, congratulations to both of those players for qualifying. Then we saw Kaz, another Ukrainian, not making it in, who also tends to be a Dreamhack Masters mainstay. On top of that, the Croatian Protoss player Goblin, known for his Phoenix usage and his cheesy build orders, also not making it in. So three, I'd say actually major upsets in the European qualifier there. Now the groups did get announced immediately after, and let's immediately have a look at these groups to see if there's anything that stands out. We see Group A, Serral, the king of that group. Serral, Showtime, Uthermal, Mana, Harstem, and DNS. I'd say the top 6 most likely in that group. Lilbao and Akron, dangerous outsiders though, definitely nothing to scoff at. This is the type of group where I think Serral and Showtime and perhaps even Uthermal are definitely the higher tier players and most likely will make it through. Then you have Mana, DNS and Harstem fighting for that final spot in that group. And if we take a look at Group B, in my mind, Drogo, Skilles, Raynor and Elaser are the favorites. Denver very close, and Christiana, after having a good performance in the last season, also of course a very viable candidate to make it into that playoff stage. Top 4 obviously advancing. Strange, a relatively dangerous outsider, and I think Battleby by far the weakest player in the group, but of course capable of perhaps taking a series, taking a couple of maps here and there as well. In Group C, the favorites are Clem, Gongfu, Banda, Marine Lord and Spirit in my mind. Stefano not being that active anymore and working a full-time job, sort of not really showing up in this Dreamhacks up until this point. I think this would be a fair characterization. Now, of course, there's always possibilities for someone like Hellraiser to make a bit of a miracle run, and for Jumi maybe to upset one of the other tosses with some cheesy early game shenanigans. But in general, I would say that Clem wins this group, closely followed by Spirit and Marine Lord, and Kung Fu Banda, I'd say, is a solid fourth there as well. In Group D, I'm expecting a first place here for Hero Marine, Lambo in a solid second, even though he had a poor result in that last season. I think he got 6th or maybe even 7th place in his group. This time he'll come back, and I'm pretty sure he'll come back strong as well. Very frustrated with that poor result. Max Packs in this group as well. And then Gerald, Shadowne, Vanya, very similar players that will most likely be fighting for that 4th place spot. Now, the final name in that group, King Cobra, is one that has gotten a little bit of fame lately because he managed to take out 3 Terrans in a row in one of the EPT Cups. That was Clem, Marine Lord, and Coffee, 3 pretty high-level Terrans with a very special playstyle of messing carriers and Tempest. Sadly for King Cobra, there's only a single Terran in this group, but I do know that he also loved the cannon rush back in the day. So if you're fond of people cannon rushing, I'd stay tuned to King Cobra and see what he's going to be up to in this Dreamhack Masters. This week also saw our first semi-final in the GSL as Zest managed to take out Rogue in a nail-biting best of 7 that went all the way to the final match 4-3 in favor of Zest in a series, honestly, that was fantastic. One of the better series that Zest has played recently, where he was extremely diverse. A lot of openers looked alike, but all had different endings. We saw charge lot all-ins, we saw double Void Ray, we saw Phoenixes, we saw a glaive build, a 6-gate glaive build, very aggressive play. Didn't always work out, but it was fantastic to watch. And we saw a Zest who just basically was unleashed. Now, there is a couple of notes to place there as well. It felt like in the last game, Rogue actually had the game won. All he needed to do was just make Brood Lords at home. He decided to morph them across the map and use them as a harassment unit, then got absolutely blasted by a frontal push out of Zest. A very weird ending to the series, which at times it felt like Rogue was just completely outplaying Zest, and other games it felt like Rogue had no clue what was going on. But honestly, a fantastic series to watch. On the back of that series, it spawned one hell of a Reddit post. Why I think the Zest Bank is a myth. Now, this Reddit post basically tried to explain why Zest often is floating money. And although I do like people making excuses for poor macro out of Protoss, I don't think this is necessarily always true. Whenever someone is floating money, and especially when a high-level player is floating money, very often people think that there's some type of plan with it or there's a reason for it. And sometimes, yes, there is going to be a plan with it. Protoss in general will need to save some warp ins. That is completely true. However, there's also going to be situations, I think a clip gets linked later on in the thread, in which Zest is floating 3k minerals. Now, you'd need 16 gateways and able to afford that in one warp in. So it's going to be very situation based. There is, however, one situation that I see come by very often that I'd like to explain. And that is in PvT. He often has a big float around the 730 mark or the 740 mark, somewhere around that. And the reason for that is because Zest likes to delay his initial burst of gateways. So whereas most players like to, from 3 gateways, go straight to 8, and they have a bit of a cut in unit production, they prefer getting a lot of actual buildings, so they're producing a lot of buildings, that money isn't spent in units. Zest prefers getting eco and units at the same time. So Zest delays his own production. This way he will have a lot of units for the first push that Terran will do, around 640, 650, and he will maximize the eco and the amount of units. But that means that afterwards he will need to start adding production. At that point his economy is so big that he simply doesn't have the production with the 3 gateways anymore, even if he's continuously producing, to spend all of that money. So he needs to add extra gateways. That's why he often goes up to 10 gateways a bit faster to get rid of that bank after. And I think that is where the original Zest bank comes from. But there's also loads of situations in which he just macros poorly, and people should be able to call that out. So basically, to sum it up, yes, Zest does often have a bank, and yes, often there is a decent reason for it. But also sometimes his macro just sucks a little bit, and everyone's macro sucks a little bit. That is okay, you know? People make mistakes. It's a difficult game. The mechanics are hard. Like, it's not just one reason always. For this week's Game of the Week, Max Pax versus Clem, game number 4 from their ESL Open Cup, played on Romanticide. Absolutely brilliant game, action-packed, in which Clem seemed to be so far ahead that he couldn't lose no more. And then MaxPack started playing with DTs, with Blink Stalkers, Disruptor, insane control, extremely high speed. Honestly, one of the most entertaining games I've seen in a long time. Clem was streaming this live as well, and it looked insanely intense. It's just... this is the way PvT is supposed to be. It really reminded me of that game between Bunny and PartinG, except this was way more low eco and more basic units. I absolutely loved watching this. It's, for me, one of the better games that we've seen this year. This week also had 3 ESL Open Cups with Zest versus Beyond in the finals on Sunday to start with over in Korea. Beyond managed to take out Zest 3-1 and take the first cup home. The second one we saw that Clem versus MaxPax, and oh boy, what a series it was. 3-2 in the finals for Clem, but honestly, this final could have gone either way. Extremely high level, action-packed games, both players wanting to be aggressive, and it really makes for fantastic games between these two guys. So Clem taking the European one home. Then America, we saw Special take the cup against Zaun in the finals. Special once again shining in that TVP matchup, showing that he's very well capable of beating the best, because Zaun, let's be real, is one of the better Protosses when it comes to PvT. For this week's clip of the week, we had Solar relive an extremely painful memory. Last time it was against Maru, this time it was against Beyond. Oh.
Solar gonna back up. He's not gonna go for the kill. No! Solar! No!
Poor Solar. Losing another army like that against another top Korean Terran on Romanticide. Gotta hurt a little bit. That's going to be it, but not before we answer the final question, of course. Did Bin Laden ever get funded by the CIA? And the answer is no. He never directly got any funds by the CIA. CIA did fund the Mujahideen fighting the Soviets in Afghanistan, but they never funded the Afghan Arabs that Bin Laden had trained. So there's your answer. Thanks everyone so much for watching. This is going to be it. Don't forget to hit the like button. I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.